I'm Tyler, 27, and for most of my life, I've been the backup plan. You know, the sibling they call when something breaks, something's late, or someone needs to be bailed out, but never the one they celebrate. My younger brother, Kyle, is 24, and if there was ever a living, breathing definition of a golden child, it's him. He's charming in the way people with no real consequences often are, funny, reckless, impulsive, and somehow always walking away unscathed. Growing up, Kyle got away with everything. He could crash his bike into the neighbor's new car, and somehow I'd be the one grounded for not watching him. He failed classes and still got summer trips. I got straight A's and heard, "That's what we expect from you." I used to think maybe they were just harder on me because I was older. But by the time we were both adults and I was holding down 2 jobs to get through school while Kyle was dropping out of his third community college because the vibe was off, that illusion faded. I worked at a warehouse during the day and did remote tech support in the evenings, barely sleeping. Meanwhile, Kyle was borrowing our dad's truck until he wrapped it around a lamppost. No problem. My parents pulled some savings, bought him a used Honda. That lasted 6 months before he rear-ended someone texting at a red light. They were upset, sure, for all of a week, until Kyle guilt-tripped mom by saying, "You just don't understand what I'm going through." Cue the third car. At that point, I started quietly keeping tabs. Not in a gotcha way, but more like survival. If something broke in my life, if I lost my apartment, if I got sick, I needed to know just how much help, if any, I could reasonably expect. The answer came about 6 months ago when I was diagnosed with something I never thought I'd hear at 27, a serious autoimmune disorder. Not fatal if managed, but the first procedure I needed, and for immunoglobulin therapy, was upwards of $5,000 out of pocket even after insurance. I didn't cry when I got the diagnosis. I didn't cry when the specialist walked me through the side effects and warned me it would be a marathon, not a sprint. But I did cry, just a little, when I got home and called my parents. It was a short conversation. I told them everything, voice shaking, trying to keep it together. When I finally said, "I just need a little help to get the first round covered. Anything you can manage, even a loan I can pay back," I heard a heavy sigh from my dad. "Tyler," he said flatly, "we can't keep wasting money on you." I was stunned. "Wasting? You're always asking for something," he said, as if I were some chronic moocher. "First it was books, then your car, now this? Kyle's the one who has potential. You're just surviving." My mom didn't even try to soften it. She actually scoffed and muttered, "We've got enough on our plate with Kyle. He's finally starting to focus. You want to ruin that?" That was it. That was the moment something broke clean inside me. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. I stared at the wall for an hour before standing up and going to work. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop and logged into every account I'd ever made that was connected to theirs. And I realized something. They'd never really taken care of me, but I had taken care of them. Quietly, automatically, relentlessly. After I got my first real job, they asked to link their utility payments to my account, just until Dad's overtime kicks in. I agreed. I thought it was temporary. That was 5 years ago. Then came the mortgage. When Kyle dropped out the second time and Dad's hours got cut, they said, "It's just 1 month." I covered it. It became 3. Then it became permanent. They gave me some sob story about how interest rates would crush them, and I, like a fool, said, "Just send me the bill. I'll take care of it." I'd automated everything. I didn't even think about it. Until I looked back and saw that I had been quietly paying $1,200 a month for the past year alone, covering their house, their lights, their water. I'd kept a roof over their heads while they left me to rot. And the worst part? They didn't even know. They were still living under the delusion that Kyle's random DoorDash gig was somehow covering their survival, that he was stepping up, that he had potential. And me? I was just the background noise, the spare son they kept in case Kyle didn't pan out. I didn't cancel anything. Not yet. That would have been too easy. Instead, I waited. I paid every bill. I went to every appointment. I picked up more freelance hours, more side jobs. I got the treatment. I got better. Slowly. Painfully. Quietly. Every time the meds made me nauseous, every time the exhaustion made me collapse on the floor of my apartment, I thought about Kyle's third car. I thought about my mom shrugging and saying he had potential. I thought about my dad calling my diagnosis a waste. And I waited. For months passed. Then Kyle posted a photo on Instagram of his new car. Car number 4. A slick new Mazda with custom tires. Captioned, "Fourth time's the charm. Thanks, Mom and Dad. It wasn't even subtle. That night, I made one phone call to my bank. Then I logged into my accounts and, one by one, ended every automatic payment. Mortgage? Gone. Utilities? Cut. I didn't even tell them. Just like they didn't tell me when they decided my life wasn't worth investing in. And then I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to 7 missed calls. All from Dad. An hour later, more from Mom. Then Kyle. Then Mom's cell too. Then home. And then the text messages started. Tyler, something's wrong with the account. Tyler, did you change something? Mortgage bounced. Lights are off. We need to talk. But the one that got me, really got me, was from Mom. She sent it around midnight. Just 5 words. Please, don't do this. I read it 3 times. Then I turned off my phone and went back to sleep. It's been 5 days since I pulled the plug, and the silence has never felt so loud. I live in a small studio apartment on the 3rd floor of an old building that creaks every time someone walks down the hallway. The heater rattles like it's coughing up its last breath, and the water pressure is a joke. But it's mine. Every cracked tile and flickering bulb is mine. And for the first time in years, I wake up without someone else's weight sitting on my chest, without the dread of a new charge I never agreed to, a new favor I'd never be thanked for. But peace, it turns out, is complicated. Because even though I cut the cord, they're still tugging the ends. I checked my email on my laptop. I still haven't turned my phone back on, and the first thing I saw was a message from their bank, an automatic alert forwarded to me because I'm still technically listed as an authorized monitor on their joint mortgage account. It just said, missed payment, final notice. That was followed by another email, this time from the electric company, saying the service address had received a shut-off warning. There were more: water, gas, internet. All of them had gone unpaid since I stopped the auto drafts. I didn't even realize I was the only one keeping everything alive. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. A little. Then came the message from my aunt, the only sane person in the extended family. Subject line: what happened? She didn't accuse me. Didn't guilt trip me. Just said my parents had shown up at her house distraught, that Kyle was having a meltdown, and that apparently I'd cut them off without warning. She ended her message with something that stuck with me. I know they've taken you for granted. Everyone does. But maybe just talk to them? They're still your family. Still your family. The phrase gnawed at me. Like being biologically related should give them unlimited withdrawals from my patience, my bank account, my sanity. I didn't respond. By day 6, I started seeing the ripple effects. Kyle posted a story on Instagram, just a black screen with the words, "Some people are so fake it's disgusting," over moody music. That was followed by a photo of him standing in front of a tow truck, captioned, "Guess it's my fault for trusting leeches." Leeches. He was calling me the leech. The guy who paid for his life to run on cruise control for 3 years. The guy who covered rent and food and power so he could crash cars and throw tantrums. And then, on the morning of day 7, the dam finally broke. I came back from a walk to find a manila envelope wedged under my door. No return address. Just my name, scribbled in red ink. Inside were printed copies of every payment record from the last 3 years, every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every transaction made from my account. Highlighted, annotated, circled, and pinned. And on the last page, a note in my father's handwriting. You think this makes you a martyr? You think ruining our lives makes you righteous? We gave you life. You owe us. If you don't fix this, we'll make sure the whole family knows exactly who you are. That's when I finally laughed. Because for once, they were right. I wasn't a martyr. I wasn't doing this to teach them a lesson or make a statement. I was just done. Done begging for basic respect. Done funding my own mistreatment. Done pretending they'd change if I just gave more. I took the envelope, scanned every page, and filed it under a folder on my desktop titled Insurance. Then I set up a secure backup and sent a copy to myself under a fake email, just in case. That night, I got a knock at my door. It was Kyle. He looked rough. Hoodie half-zipped, eyes bloodshot, a patchy beard he clearly hadn't trimmed in weeks. I didn't say anything as I opened the door. He didn't wait to be invited in. "Dude," he said, walking past me like he owned the place. "What is going on with you?" I closed the door but stayed standing. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean," he snapped. "You froze everything. They're losing the house. Dad had to pawn his watch. Mom's losing her mind. You think this is funny?" "No," I said, voice calm. "I think it's overdue." He scoffed. "You're punishing all of us because you're bitter. You think that makes you better?" I raised an eyebrow. Punishing? You mean not paying for all your stuff anymore? He threw up his hands. We needed you. You just bailed. Needed me, I repeated. Like when I needed help with my treatment and Dad said I wasn't worth the money? That kind of need. Kyle's jaw clenched. That's not what he meant. No, Kyle, I said, stepping forward. That's exactly what he meant. And Mom backed him up. And you? You didn't even ask if I was okay. You posted a photo of your car. The fourth one. He looked away, suddenly unsure. I didn't do this to punish anyone, I said, my voice low. I did this because I'm done pretending I'm part of a family that only remembers I exist when there's a bill due. He didn't respond, just stared at the floor. Then, almost too quietly to hear, he mumbled, "They said you'd come around eventually." I nodded slowly. They were wrong. I opened the door, letting the cold air pour in. He hesitated. So what? You're just gonna let them drown? I didn't answer, just stared at him until he finally stepped out. As I closed the door behind him, I caught a glimpse of his expression, somewhere between disbelief and fear. Maybe for the first time, Kyle realized I wasn't bluffing, that I was the only thing keeping the house of cards from collapsing, and I had just walked away. And tomorrow? That's when everything comes to. Because what Kyle and my parents don't know yet is that I didn't just cut off the payments. I filed something else, something bigger, something they won't see coming. The morning of day 8 felt colder, not weather-wise, but in the kind of way where the air in your apartment feels a little more still, a little more tense. Like even the silence is holding its breath. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding a cup of instant coffee that had gone cold before I remembered to drink it. My phone still sat powered off on the table like a ticking bomb. But my laptop? That was wide open. Tabs everywhere. Emails, documents, timestamps. I'd been preparing for this for weeks now, quietly. See, that something bigger I mentioned? It wasn't a dramatic stunt. It wasn't even about revenge, not really. It was about protection mine. And once I realized just how many accounts my name was tied to, how many liabilities I'd shouldered without even knowing it, I started peeling it all back. It started with the taxes. Last year, I got a notice from the IRS about unreported property-related deductions on a mortgage I wasn't even claiming. Confused, I asked my parents if they'd done anything unusual with the filings. They brushed me off, told me it was probably a clerical thing. But when I looked deeper, when I requested a full transcript, I found out they'd listed me as a co-owner of their home 2 years ago, without telling me, without my signature. It explained why I kept getting certain bank statements I never asked for, why my credit report had taken a sudden dip despite my careful budgeting, why I was getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize, asking about loan refinancing. Turns out, I wasn't just funding their survival, I was legally entangled in it. My name was on the mortgage, the second loan they took out just to stay afloat, and even the car insurance policy Kyle used for his third totaled vehicle. And the worst part? I never signed any of it. Not in ink, anyway. But I knew my dad was tech-savvy enough to forge a digital signature. He'd worked in IT years ago, knew just enough to make something look convincing, and just little enough to assume no one would ever check. So I did. I gathered every document, cross-referenced every digital signature timestamp, pulled every email trail and text confirmation from my cloud backups, called the bank pretending to ask about updating my information just to get a list of all open lines associated with my name. And once I had it all, I walked down to a legal aid clinic 2 blocks from my apartment. The lawyer they assigned to me was a guy named Dario, mid-40s, sharp eyes, soft voice. He listened to everything I said without once interrupting me. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said the words I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. Tyler, what they've done could be considered fraud. He explained the process, how I could file a formal affidavit denying authorization, how I could submit copies of the forged documents for investigation, how I could potentially absolve myself of liability, and how they might face legal consequences for falsifying my involvement. It wasn't an easy decision. I sat with it for weeks. Because for all the pain, all the neglect, all the ways they treated me like a spare part, I still didn't want to destroy them. But then the envelope came. That smug, venom-soaked letter from my dad, telling me I owed them, telling me I was the problem. That was the final push. So now, on day 8, the paperwork was in. The mortgage company had been notified. The affidavit had been signed, notarized, and emailed. The bank had locked down the questionable loans pending investigation. And every agency with my name on file now had one clear message from me. I did not agree to any of this. I stood by the window and stared out across the street. The city always moved, horns, buses, some guy yelling on his phone like it was a performance. Life continued out there, loud and chaotic. Inside, it was quiet, tense, final. Around noon, the emails started coming in. First from the mortgage lender, we are reviewing the attached documentation. All payments and proceedings have been temporarily frozen until further notice. Then from the fraud department at the bank, due to the severity of the allegations, we are escalating this case to our legal team. And finally, from Dario, you did the right thing. Now let's wait and see what they do when they realize they can't hide behind your name anymore. I paced my apartment for hours. The weight of it was both freeing and crushing. I was finally cutting the last threads they'd used to tie me to their chaos, but I knew what came next. The storm. And sure enough, just after 6 p.m., someone started buzzing my apartment. Not once, not twice, 10 times in a row. I didn't answer, just peeked through the peephole. It was my mom. She looked smaller, not physically, but in presence. Hair pulled into a messy bun, clothes thrown on like she got dressed in a panic. Her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't even desperate. It was empty. Like someone who'd finally realized the floor beneath her wasn't real. It was scaffolding built by someone else, and now it was gone. She pressed the intercom button again. Tyler, baby, please. We need to talk. Your father's freaking out. We didn't mean for it to get this far. I didn't move. Just let me in, she said, voice cracking. We'll figure it out. I promise. We can fix this. But that's the thing. It couldn't be fixed. Not this time. And she knew it. I watched her stand there for another minute, her breath fogging the glass as she muttered something I couldn't hear. Then, finally, she turned and walked away. My phone, still off, sat on the table beside me. I didn't turn it on. I didn't need to. Because I knew what was waiting. Voicemails. Apologies. Excuses. Bargaining. Maybe even threats, once Dad got involved. But it didn't matter. Because the scaffolding was gone. And they were finally standing in the rubble they built. And me? I was already halfway through rebuilding something of my own. I waited a full 3 days after my mother left my doorstep before I finally powered my phone back on. Not because I was curious. I knew exactly what I'd find. But because I needed to be ready. Ready to hear it all, read it all, face it all, and end it all. As soon as the screen lit up, the deluge hit. 37 voicemails. 83 text messages. 17 missed calls from my dad alone. 2 from unknown, which I'd bet were him using another phone after I blocked his number. Kyle had texted 5 times, each one more unhinged than the last. The first was snarky. Congrats. You ruined everything. Hope that makes you feel like a man. The second was more desperate. They're talking about selling the house. I'll lose my room. Is that what you wanted? The third was a guilt trip. They're crying every night, Tyler. But I'm sure that doesn't matter to you. Then came the threat. I'm warning you. If Dad goes down for this, we're done. Forever. And finally, an eerie silence. No messages. Just a single photo he sent. A for sale sign hammered into the lawn of our old family home. They were losing the house. That place had been my prison for so many years. The walls remembered the insults, the gaslighting, the way they treated my silence like permission and my obedience like duty. And now it was emptying out. Not because of some grand revenge scheme, but because I finally walked away. Quietly. But I wasn't done yet. The lawyer, Dario, had gotten back to me with good news. After reviewing the documents and confirming that the digital signatures were mismatched from any verified samples of mine, the mortgage lender had agreed to remove my name from the account. That meant I was no longer financially responsible for their home or the balloon loan they took out behind my back. The car insurance agency had opened a fraud investigation into the use of my identity on multiple vehicles, specifically the policy that covered Kyle's third car. Turns out, the signature authorization file they had wasn't even encrypted. It had metadata showing it was created on my dad's work computer. And the biggest blow? The IRS had launched a preliminary audit on their household, given the tax deductions they'd claimed under my name for years without my consent. If it moved forward, it wouldn't just mean fines. It would mean federal scrutiny, frozen refunds, possible charges. I didn't even have to lift a finger after that. It snowballed on its own. My parents began calling other family members, pleading their case, spinning lies, trying to control the narrative. But they didn't realize I'd already spoken to Aunt Marie, the only relative who ever treated me with respect. She asked for the truth. I sent her everything. The documents, The loan info, the forged mortgage forms, the hospital records showing I paid out of pocket for my treatment after being denied help. She was horrified. She started forwarding the info to other family members. Quietly, surgically. No drama. Just the facts. Within a week, the phone calls changed tone. Now it wasn't, "Please come fix this." It was, "How could you do this to your family?" And I answered that one, for the first and last time. I called my dad. I didn't warn him. I just hit call, and he picked up on the first ring. His voice was sharp, accusatory. "You think you've won?" "No," I said calmly. "There's no winning here. There's just consequences. You're going to let your mother lose her house? After everything we did for you?" I could hear the rage in his voice, the absolute inability to accept that his actions had consequences, that I wasn't coming to the rescue anymore. "You didn't do anything for me," I said. "You used me. You bled me dry. You gambled with my name, my credit, my future. And when I got sick, you told me I wasn't worth saving." There was a pause. He tried to recover. "That's not what I meant." "You said it, Dad." And Mom agreed. "You both decided Kyle's new car mattered more than my health. You're twisting this." "No, I'm finally seeing it clearly. You spent years teaching me that love was conditional, that my worth was tied to what I could provide. Well, I'm done providing." The silence that followed was longer this time, and heavier. "We're your parents," he said finally. "You don't turn your back on family." "No," I said quietly. "You turned your back on me. Years ago. You just never expected me to walk away." And then I hung up. That was the last time we ever spoke. 2 months passed. The house went on the market and stayed there. Kyle moved in with a friend. My parents relocated to a rental an hour away, smaller, quieter. I heard through the grapevine that they blamed everything on the economy. On bad luck. On me. But no one really bought it. Not after the paper trail. I continued my treatment. My health stabilized. With the financial strain gone, I was finally able to breathe. I even upgraded to a slightly better apartment. A corner unit with actual water pressure and a balcony that caught the sunset. One evening, I sat out there with a mug of tea and a journal in my lap. I wasn't much of a writer, but I needed to process what had happened, what I had done. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage, the betrayal, the grief, they were still there, but they didn't define me. For the first time in years, I was living on my own terms. Not out of guilt, not out of fear, just living. A week later, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in familiar cursive. I opened it. Inside, it read, "I don't know if you'll ever forgive us, but I'm sorry. I truly am. Mom." I folded the card, placed it back in the envelope, and tucked it into a drawer. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I'd already made peace with it. With all of it. Some bridges burn. Some bridges rot slowly until one day they collapse. And you realize the only thing keeping you from falling with them was the fact that you let go. That's what I'd done. And in letting go, I saved myself. So no, I didn't ruin my family. They did that all on their own. I just stopped paying the price for it.